just a little intro. Yeah, my name's Tom Chittenden, and we make gas pumps. And as soon as I said, hey, we make gas pumps, I think about 3 people in the back just kind of checked out. Hey, this guy's going to talk about gas pumps for the rest of the time. But what we're going to talk about is transformational approaches to legacy businesses. So, who's Wayne? What you heard was 120 years, but it's not just been in the business 120 years. We've led innovation in fuels retail. We invented pay at the pump. We delivered one of the first blending dispensers. Our first gasoline dispenser was almost 100 years ago. We've delivered continuous innovation throughout the history of fuels retail, from the time that folks were driving cars to where we're at today. And we've continued to do that over time. And so when we've come to where we're at today, what we look at is that we have essentially about 625,000 fuel dispensers installed globally. So all of these consumer touch points lead to a significant amount of transactions, of interaction, of customer experiences. 20 million cars in the US per day visit a Wayne dispenser. 260 million gallons of fuel go through our fuel dispensers every day. 40 million transactions are conducted at Wayne dispensers every day. So we have a lot of opportunity to interact with not only our customers, but also the consumer in general. But we have a big problem here. And that problem is that we're not participating in any of this. Our reoccurring revenue streams are basically from spare parts that we sell in our dispensers, and our dispensers last 20 years. So how do we really get after new value creation? How do we transform our business? How do we create value for the consumer, and how do we create value for our customers, and how do we get better, and how do we create new reoccurring revenue streams? So when I think about what our customers are looking at, they have a lot of problems, right? They have a lot of legacy implementations of technologies. They think about, okay, well, what's my next loyalty program? How do I drive more customers to my gas station, right? Mobile payment, it's the wild west of mobile payment out there right now, and fuels retail is now just adopting mobile payment implementations. There's a lot of information being put out there right now. Chevron just had an announcement that they're going to take Apple Pay. ExxonMobil is doing a pilot with mobile payment. But there's all of these different implementations, and it's very confusing. How do I connect to my assets at the location so I can, deliver efficiencies for my business, right? So I can increase profitability, so I can get real-time views of what the performance of my locations look like. What are my site assets doing? How do I deliver a better experience to my consumers, right? So when my customer's customer engage with Wayne products, what's their experience like, and how do we make that better? So they have all of these things floating around them, and basically what that means is, globally, there's about $6.1 billion of IT spend in fuels retail, just on the IT portion. And all of these guys are just running in place. They have a lot of legacy implementations that basically have legacy protocols, that have legacy devices, and they're trying to keep up with all this new innovation. They're trying to keep up with all of these new things, and they just can't do it effectively. So everything they're doing is just churn. Everything they're doing isn't really providing real value to their businesses, but also to the consumer, right? But they have a bigger problem, and probably the thing that keeps them up at night the most, and the thing that they worry about the most, is Anna. Anna is 14 years old. She's my daughter, by the way. But she's 14 years old. I got her an iPhone when she was 12, right? She's always been on the computer. She's had an iPad. She's got a Kindle. She's on her iPhone all the time. She texts, she tweets, she group chats, she posts to Facebook. She does all these things. She has an app for everything. And if it doesn't work, she gets frustrated. She doesn't understand why it doesn't work. Anna will be filling up a car, hopefully it's safe for her, but she'll be filling up at a gas station in 2 years, right? So what is her expectation of the experience? In fuels retail, the fueling experience hasn't changed in 25 years, right? If you pay at the pump in the US, that experience hasn't changed at all, right? So what new value is being created? How do retailers talk to this new digital native, right? How do they reach out to her and say, this is the way that we want to conduct business with you. This is how we conduct commerce at our locations, right? So they have all this legacy implementations. They can't keep up with it. They're spending a lot of money. They have this new wave of consumers that are coming out that are much more aware, that are much more seeking unique experiences that are tailored to them. So what do? Well, today, a 120-year-old company, we're a pump provider. So what we're looking to do is transform our business so we're a solutions provider, right? And how do we do that? Well, there's a couple different things, right? We need to start connecting devices. We need to start pulling information together. We need to start getting the relevant data and then exposing that in new ways. We also have to get a lot better about how we deliver things. When we delivered products in the past, that's what we did. We delivered a product, right? We had one revenue stream with the sale. And like I said before, it was just our recurring revenue streams were just spare part sales. And oh, by the way, our dispensers last for 20 years, right? So how do we get better in our business, but at the same time deliver more value? And that's where we're moving to a service provider model. So the first thing we had to do was we had to put our gateway in place, right? Our edge device. We had to connect all these legacy devices, all these legacy implementations at the site. And that's what we call our fusion box. It pulls everything together at the site. Because the problem in fuels retail is that when you talk to a gas pump, they're, current loop and 485 protocols and serial-based implementations. Nothing's internet connected. Nothing is network connected. So you got to pull all that data together, and you got to crunch it at the site. You got to aggregate it at the site. You got to get it all together. And then the second step is we expose that to the cloud, right? So we pull all that data up, and we say, okay, this is everything that's happening at the location. Right? And this is what we're doing today. So we started to implement this new approach. It says we're going to not only get better about how we automate a gas station, right, connected to our pumps, but we're also going to get better about how we take that data and pull it up, right? So, I go to my, CEO and I say, hey, we're going to do a lot of software. And that software, we're going to go in an agile approach, right? And, our waterfall approaches are gone, right? We got to deliver minimum viable products. And then we don't know exactly all the requirements, but we're going to get it to the field fast. And then we're going to build on it from there. And everything is like, hold on a second. How many softwares do I need? Do I need 2? Do I need 1? No, we're going to go, okay? So it's a whole new mindset because we have this industrial company that's been around for 120 years and we're transforming it into a service provider, right? And creating new value. So the first thing we do is that once we have all that data in the cloud, we start to expose services. So I talked about mobile payment. Mobile payment's the Wild West, right? And what Wayne will never do is, be a mobile payment provider. There's a lot of guys out there that do it a lot better than we ever will. But how do we participate in that mobile payment experience in such a way that it brings value to our customers? They have all this legacy implementation. I take all the data, I expose it up to the site. Well, how do I get that data to a mobile payment provider? Well, fuels retailers, they may have a national program, they may have a local program for mobile payment, or a franchisee may have their own mobile payment experience or implementation. Well, how do we do that? Well, we expose that through APIs. Right? We have a simple API that anybody can subscribe to. All the complication, all of the complexity around fuels retail, we basically completely keep that separate so they don't have to be concerned about it. All they have to do is worry about how to conduct a mobile payment transaction. Same thing for loyalty. If you think about like grocery programs, and if you think about airline programs, and all these different programs of collecting points and earning rewards and all these things. Again, we're not good at that, but what we are good at is fuels retail. So how do I take that experience and expose it to loyalty providers? Again, bring it up to the cloud, and then through APIs, expose it to the loyalty providers. So I can have multiple loyalty providers connected, multiple mobile payment providers connected. So now I can start to offer a one-to-one consumer relationship, right? So now they have an experience that is much more tailored to their needs, right? So they use their mobile phone, it's connected to their loyalty programs, it all interoperates, and it all delivers that unique value proposition. So essentially, what does that bring us, right? So that cloud architecture lets us, just deliver software a lot faster, deliver it above site without impacting the site operations at the location, right? It allows us to get a lot better about how we interact with third parties, right? Because now we don't have to tell them, hey, payment security implementations of the site, a customer's data, we expose that through APIs above site, so it lets them talk and interact with that location a lot better. And then it removes that reliance on those legacy systems, right? Because we abstract that away, right? So now when I go to a third party, when I go to a mobile payment provider and I say, hey, look, I'm going to expose this information to you. Well, I got to worry about a gas pump and what's the gas pump transaction flow. Don't worry about it, right? I got it. And I'll just expose you the information you need at the time you need it, when you need it. And then so from a remote management and diagnostics perspective, right? So when we start to look at, okay, I want to increase and improve the way that a consumer interacts with a gas pump or a C-store environment, but I also want to get all the data around assets, around software delivery, around uptime, around maintenance schedules. I want to get all of that information and pull that up so that they can get a lot smarter about their business, right? So they can get a lot more efficient and a lot more profitable, right? So when I start to take information about devices that I'm not even a vendor for, I just connect to them, then I can start to say, okay, well, here's your uptime, here's your maintenance schedule, here's when you need to issue a ticket, here's when you need to track a service provider out to the location. When we start to do all these things, then that customer who now participates in that service can get a lot more benefit from the uptime and reliability of the site infrastructure. And the uptime for a fuel station is where all the money is. If they have to deploy a service technician to fix something, well, the site's down for 4 hours. The time that it's down is a huge amount of loss in terms of revenue. They don't really care about paying somebody to go out. They care about that downtime. So downtime avoidance is what it's all about for these guys. So again, connecting all those devices and then sending the data up. So we provide those services, but more importantly, when we talk to other service providers, they say, well, how do I get the information? How do I know when that device, how do I know when to go out? How do I know when to contact the location and do those things? And again, we do that through APIs, and we say, here's the data. Here's what you need to conduct a service call, or here's what you need to service the equipment, do a preemptive maintenance on the devices. So from an electronic payment perspective, so if you think about a gas station, right, you use credit cards or EMV cards, or you pay at the pump, or you pay in store, or you do these things. Well, from a Wayne perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at ways we can gain economies of scale in which we approach payment, right? So if I'm in the US, or if I'm in Latin America, or if I'm in Asia Pacific, basically a payment transaction, electronic payment transaction is essentially the same, but there's regional requirements and security requirements. But how do I build a platform that then I can connect to different front-end processors for payment? I can connect to different loyalty providers. I can connect to different bank network certifications. But how do I deliver a approach that lets me get better about the way I do payment globally? But I got a big challenge, right, and an opportunity, the way you look at it. In the U.S., here in the U.K., you guys have already moved to chip cards, EMV cards. In the U.S., they're about to do that. So everybody, will be issued a chip card in the United States, and everybody has to transition. So what that means for us is a significant amount of change. What that means is basically all of the bank certifications and the bank network interfaces and the front-end processor interfaces, all of that is changing. Significant amount of churn, significant amount of development work, significant amount of delivery. So how do we get better at that? How do we do that in such a way that we can deliver faster? And how do we beat the competition in the market? That's the other big challenge, right? How do we make sure that we have the most value for our customers at the right time? And we do that with a cloud payment service we call EPS in the cloud. And so what we've done is we've partnered for e-commerce platform, and then again, through an API from the location, from our Fusion box up to the EPS in the cloud, the payment processor in the cloud, we're able to get the data back and forth very easily. And then that gives me one approach from the site up above. And then we can start through APIs, we can start to interface to all the front-end processors, all of the bank processors, all of the credit card processors. We can start to interface to all these guys separately. And so what does that do for me, right? It lets me get a lot faster with how I can deliver to the market. It lets me lower my overall cost, and I can focus on my core competencies, right? So when I start to leverage those data interfaces, those APIs, and when I start to leverage that and I look at the front-end processors and those interfaces, all of that is abstracted away from me. I can really focus on what's important to my business, right? So EPS in the cloud, how does that work? Well, it's basically a cloud-based implementation for electronic payment. Again, I can interface to multiple front-end processors through the API management. It provides me a single site view, so I get all of the data, and I can, an enterprise view. So I can look at all of the data across multiple locations, and I can pull that all together, and I can then start to offer real value back to the retailers or even internally. One of the biggest things that it does, it provides peace of mind from a security perspective. So we're leveraging some enhanced security tools that make it very difficult for the bad guys to steal data, to steal payment data, to steal any of that information. So the way that works is that, so today, if you conduct a pay-at-the-pump transaction, there's a lot of legacy systems involved. So what we've done is we've taken that transaction, so you do a payment at the pump, that goes to my Fusion box, and then so what happens is that goes up to our cloud EPS, and it tokenizes the data. So it makes it really hard for the bad guys to get in and steal it, right? Then that goes across my EPS in the cloud. So this is where all the business logic is contained. This is where all of everything that I need to do to conduct a transaction, the card routing, how do I prompt? Do I need to prompt for zip code, or do I need an address, or is it a bank account, or is it a savings account? All of those things. So then it detokenizes, and then it goes out to the payment processor. It processes, and then essentially the whole process just goes in reverse, and then the transaction is approved. This happens in milliseconds, right? So the big key shift is site-level implementations of processing payment is now moved above site. It's done in a secure fashion, and we use a tokenization broker to essentially secure all of the data. And this does a couple things for us. One of those, security, but the other big thing is that we start to look at the data that comes across. So every time that customer comes to the location and uses that payment card, the same token's issued over and over again, right? So now I don't know who the customer is, but I can start to track how many times they visit the location, what the basket of goods associated with what they're buying is, how they conduct transactions and how it processes. And then I can start to take those tokens and start to provide them to loyalty providers and say, okay, today, if you have a loyalty account and a payment account, that's two separate types of interactions, right? I have a payment process, and then I have a loyalty process. Well, how do I combine that? How do I get better about that? How do I make it easier for consumer, right? So I take that tokenized data, and I put it together with the payment information, and I can provide that to loyalty providers and get a lot better about the way that I conduct a transaction, deliver it fast, secure, and on time. So essentially what that culminates in is a view that's very different than the roadmap of Wayne innovation. So what you see is this eye chart of a technology tree that says our fuel dispenser is now, I wouldn't say minimized, but a part of our ecosystem that says we have all of these services that we provide around our gateway, our edge device. And those services are heavily reliant on third parties' ability to interact with those services. Because from my perspective, it's not about the ability to deliver a mobile payment wallet. It's the ability to enable the mobile payment wallet. It's the ability to enable a service provider to participate in that ecosystem. So what that does for me is that it gives me a recurring revenue stream in terms of services that I can provide to the fuels retailer. I create more value for that fuels retailer above and beyond what the pump is doing, right? I create more value for the site employee who knows more about their location, that can get better about how they conduct business, that can get more efficient, that can drive waste out of the system through the remote management diagnostics, right? I can deliver loyalty transactions in such a way that is a unique customer experience that delivers it exactly to the right consumer at the right time. And so by building this ecosystem, then, not only is it delivering the value for the consumer, but the retailer, and then for Wayne ourselves, so it lifts, the rising tide lifts all boats, and it provides value across the chain. Yeah, and so that's the Wayne Solutions.
So I really think that it did pick up a lot on what we talked about earlier, and this concept of, you had what was considered a fairly static product, right? And it was just going to be replacement parts. And now you've got this whole notion of a product plus services and constant evolution. Now, when you were thinking about APIs, is the API strategy a new strategy? How has it evolved over time? Because it strikes me that you're in a very different business than when you first thought about this.
So I think for, again, I kind of go back to the conversation with my CEO. If I said, hey, we're going to get into APIs, he would, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? It's about value creation for our customers and for the consumer, right? And it's about how do you create value. And it just so happens that you do that through APIs. But when I have the conversation with our customers, it's not about we're going to deliver a better API. It's about we're going to deliver value, right? And the technology foundation piece of that is the API that allows us to interface with those third parties to deliver that.
Yeah, so now you're a software and a services company, and you're basically getting yourself embedded in all of their services, and you've got not just a business to business, but a business to business to consumer. You talked about this ability to create loyalty programs, get those people the right information at the point of need, get them closer to context.
Right, and then it's those third-party service providers. I guess once they interface into the ecosystem, the stickiness of my business becomes much greater, right? Because they become reliant on our API that says, okay, well, before, to switch from our dispensers to another dispenser, very easy, right? I just put a new dispenser on. But if I have this service provisioning that says, hey, you get all this incremental value, it becomes very sticky, and it becomes very hard for them to change, right? And so by delivering that incremental value and by giving them something more than what they had before, it's good across the board.
Yeah, you're creating an experience that the end customer is going to get used to that's really hard to change as well. So that's actually great. Well, thank you for your time and attention. You'll be around later today for lunch and cocktails? Great.
All right,
thank you, Tom.